The politicians just finished shaking hands in Beijing, and the math says you're about to pay for it at Kroger. Not in some abstract macroeconomy way, I mean a specific number. On your actual receipt. Here it is. The average American earning $45,000 a year now spends $5,820 on groceries annually. That's 13% of gross income, before taxes, before rent, before your car payment, just food, and that number is still going up. Now let me tell you about Marcus. Last March, Marcus, 28, Columbus, Ohio, makes $46,500 at a logistics company, was standing in the tilapia aisle at Kroger. He picked up the same frozen bag he's bought maybe 40 times. Same brand, same size. $9.49. 18 months ago, that bag was $6.49. He did the math in his head. 46% more expensive. His paycheck had gone up 3%. He put it back, walked out, ate nothing for dinner that night. What Marcus didn't know, what nobody had ever told him, is that the price on that bag wasn't set in Columbus, Ohio. It was set in Beijing and Washington and the Strait of Hormuz. And right now, today, as you're watching this, those same people are in a room together deciding what your grocery bill looks like for the next 2 years. In the next 4 minutes, I'm going to show you the exact mechanism, not the vibes version, the math. Here's the belief most people hold. And I held it too, honestly. My grocery bill is high because of corporate greed. CEOs are gouging us. I used to believe that, genuinely. It felt right. I'd see record profits from Kroger, from Walmart, from Tyson Foods, and I'd think, yeah, that's the answer. Turns out I was completely wrong, or at least half wrong. And the half I was missing is the part that actually explains the number on your receipt. Wait, here's why that matters in a way nobody says out loud. When you believe it's only corporate greed, you stay angry but helpless. You can't fire a Kroger CEO. But when you understand the actual mechanism, you can work with it. You can make smarter choices around it. That's the difference between this video and every other grocery video you've seen. Here's what's actually true. Harvard Business School's pricing lab tracked tariff pass-throughs in real time. What they found was almost exactly dollar for dollar. When tariffs raised import costs by $1, consumer prices rose by $1. Not corporate profit, cost. Corporations are passing on real expenses. So then, where's the cost coming from? That's where Beijing comes in. And this is the part that changes everything. The next sentence sounds simple. It's not. On a second watch, you'll realize it rewrites the entire story of your grocery bill for the last 3 years. China supplies less than 1% of America's food by volume. Less than 1%. And yet, the trade war with China has inflated almost every grocery category you buy. How is that possible? Because you have been eating Chinese supply chains your entire life. You just couldn't see them on the label. This is where it gets uncomfortable. Marcus's tilapia? 78% of all tilapia Americans eat comes from China. The vitamin C in Marcus's orange juice? China supplies up to 90% of the vitamin C consumed in the United States. The citric acid preserving every canned good in your pantry, chips, soups, sauces, Chinese origin supply chain. The apple juice concentrate in your kids' drinks, 70% sourced from China. Marcus thought he wasn't buying Chinese food. He was eating it at every single meal. And here's where the second invisible mechanism kicks in, the one that hits even the foods that have nothing to do with China. When the US put tariffs on Chinese goods, China retaliated. They hit American soybeans, American pork, American corn. American farmers lost their largest export market almost overnight. Less revenue for farmers leads to less production capacity, leads to less domestic supply, leads to higher prices on beef, pork, and corn at your local grocery store. The ground beef that feels completely American, its price was partially set by a diplomatic decision made in Washington and Beijing. Marcus returned to Kroger the next week, standing in the same aisle. This time, he understood why the tilapia cost $9.49, but he still didn't know what to do about it. Let's fix that. Right now, today, Trump and Xi are sitting across from each other in Beijing. First time a US president has visited China in nearly a decade, and the specific thing they are negotiating has a direct line to what you pay at checkout. The mechanism is called the Board of Trade. US Trade Representative Jameson Greer proposed it. The idea? Identify roughly $30 billion in non-sensitive goods, things that aren't national security risks, and reduce tariffs on both sides. Here's what that means in plain English. If the deal holds, tariff pressure on certain food categories begins to ease. Supply chains start to reprice. In 6 to 12 months, not overnight, 6 to 12 months, some of those prices could soften. If the deal collapses, the tariff structure stays volatile, food categories stay exposed, and the current inflationary floor doesn't move. If you're still watching, you already think differently about this than most people around you. You're not just angry at a receipt, you're starting to read the system. And now for the number that reframes the entire decade. The Yale Budget Lab calculated that all 2025 tariffs combined function as an average $4,700 annual consumer loss per household in reduced purchasing power. For households earning $30,000 to $50,000, the burden is 2.5 times higher as a share of income than it is for the top earners. Tariffs aren't a trade policy for people in Marcus's income bracket. They're a consumption tax. And the people paying the most are the people who can afford it least. If you've ever stood at the checkout carousel, you did everything right. You skipped the fancy cheese, you bought the store brand, you didn't grab the impulse item, and watched the screen show you $134 for 2 people for 1 week, and felt this strange mix of confusion and anger and shame, like somehow you did something wrong. You already know exactly what I'm talking about. That feeling isn't bad budgeting. It isn't a personal failure. It is the mathematical output of a 27% cumulative grocery price increase since 2020, compounded by tariffs acting as a $1,462 annual hidden household tax, compounded by diesel prices rising 61%, making every truck delivery more expensive, compounded by the Strait of Hormuz conflict destroying the global fertilizer supply that feeds the cattle that becomes the beef you just bought. You didn't fail your budget. Your budget was hit by a geopolitical freight train, and tens of millions of Americans are in exactly that position right now. Most people never get past blaming the store. The fact that you're tracing this back to the actual source, that you want to understand the mechanism, not just the symptom, that already means you have a different relationship with money than most people around you. That's not flattery. That's just what this kind of question reveals about how someone thinks. Now, here's the thing that might break your brain a little, and I want to be honest with you about it. The Beijing deal, if it happens, might actually make your grocery bill worse before it gets better. Here's what I think nobody's saying about this. When you look at all the data together, the tariff structure, the agricultural commitments, the historical precedent, they're telling a different story than the headlines. If China commits to buying 25 million metric tons of US soybeans annually as expected, American consumers will temporarily compete against Chinese state purchasers for domestic crops. That increases commodity prices here, for corn, soy, pork. We saw this exact pattern after the 2020 Phase 1 trade deal. Prices spiked for 6 to 12 months before supply chains adjusted. The politicians will announce the deal as a victory against inflation. The grocery store will not get the memo immediately. Here's what I actually think is happening here. The China summit is solving a diplomatic problem and calling it a consumer problem. The actual consumer relief, the thing that puts money back in Marcus's pocket, requires a different toolkit entirely. Domestic agricultural investment, freight cost stabilization, supply chain diversification away from single-source dependencies. That's a multi-year project, and no summit announcement will substitute for it. My read, within 3 to 5 years, the countries that diversified their food supply chains away from single geopolitical dependencies will have meaningfully more stable grocery prices than those that didn't. The US is behind on this. That makes the decisions you make individually right now more important, not less. One implication that goes beyond the grocery aisle. If tariffs really are a regressive consumption tax hitting low-income earners 2.5 times harder than the wealthy, that's not a trade argument. That's a wealth transfer argument, and it reframes who is actually subsidizing what in this economy. Here's the defensible thing that will split your comments. The China tariff isn't protecting American workers. It's taxing American grocery shoppers to finance political leverage that primarily benefits Boeing and large soybean exporters. The Yale Budget Lab data backs this. The regressive burden ratio backs this. The beneficiaries of an agricultural purchase deal are not the same people bearing the grocery cost. Half of you will agree. Half of you will push back. Both sides have legitimate data. Drop your take below. I genuinely want to see this debate. Marcus is back in the tilapia aisle. It's 6 months after he watched a video like this one. He picks up the $9.49 bag again. This time he puts it back, not because he can't afford it, but because he made a decision. He switched to domestic catfish. He bulk bought shelf-stable items during a brief tariff relief window. He stopped buying name-brand vitamin C supplements, switched to a generic format with the same Chinese origin ingredient at a fraction of the markup. Last year, he spent $4,100 on groceries. That's $840 less than the year before. That's not a budgeting hack. That's reading the geopolitical system and making one or two specific decisions differently. He sent this video to his sister when she complained about her grocery bill. Understanding how supply chains connect to diplomatic negotiations isn't a financial concept. It's a filter. The people who understand this look at every good news announcement from Washington or Beijing and ask, what does this actually change at the checkout line and in what time frame? They don't get fooled by political wins that don't translate to price relief for 18 months. When you go back to the beginning of this video, the hook hits differently. The politicians just finished shaking hands, and the math says you're about to pay for it. Now you know why it's not cynicism, it's just the supply chain timeline. You're one of those people now. Marcus saved $840 last year. He's 30 now. He stopped using credit to bridge a grocery deficit that was never going to fix itself. He avoided nearly $4,500 in credit card interest he would have paid over 2 years at 24.99% APR. He didn't change his income, he changed his framework. If you're earning $30,000 to $70,000, feeding yourself or a family, and watching your grocery number creep up every single month, this changes what the next 2 years of your financial life looks like. Not because prices are going to crash, they're not. The floor has moved, but because the difference between passive shopping and geopolitically aware shopping over 10 years is $8,000 to $12,000. That's a car. That's 8 months of rent. That's the down payment you've been trying to save. Tonight, when you open your banking app and see what you spent on groceries last month, ask one question. Which of those items have a Chinese supply chain I can't see on the label? Tilapia, apple juice, vitamin C, citric acid in packaged foods, processed mushrooms, frozen cod. Those are your 6 most tariff-exposed categories right now. That's where the volatility lives. You don't have to overhaul your entire shopping list, you just need to know where the pressure is. If this gave you a framework you didn't have before, that's exactly what this channel is built to do. Parth Invests exists because there's a version of financial journalism that treats you like an intelligent adult, not a passive consumer of anxiety content. If you want that, the subscribe button is right there. It costs you nothing, and it means the algorithm shows you the next video I make like this one. And if you found value in this, share it. Not to go viral, because someone you know is standing in the same grocery aisle as Marcus right now, feeling the same confusion, and deserves the same explanation. Before you go, watch this one next. It connects directly to what we just covered and gives you the next layer of this. I'll see you there.